Welcome to the Connected Campus Podcast, where we explore the ways that diverse professionals are working every day to optimize their efforts to recruit, retain, and graduate their students.
We are here with episode 2 of our ongoing series in partnership with Pathify here on the Higher Ed Geek Podcast, talking with institutional leaders and getting their perspectives on building a digital-first strategic plan, something that's been on my mind a lot, of just sort of thinking in a digital-first way of how you're building kind of digital student experiences, communicating with students, marketing out to various stakeholders and things. So that'll be where we focus today with our guest is on kind of the marketing, outreach, communication side of things. Obviously a lot there. We'll cover as much as we can in the time that we have, but we'll start it as we always do. Eric, if you want to introduce yourself and your professional background briefly, and then we'll get on with the rest of our conversation here.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Dustin. I'm Eric Hazen. I'm the Director of Digital Marketing at Ferris State University in Big Rapids, Michigan. I think I'm in my 10th year in marketing now, so a little over a decade, 7th year in higher education marketing. So I've had kind of a great vantage point from there to see this rapid professionalization change in higher education marketing over the last decade. So great to be here.
Yeah, appreciate you hanging out and chatting about everything. Because the past 10 years has been, a big period of time for digital transformation of institutions, but certainly marketing is one of those big areas that I think, what I say a lot, and I don't know if you have any sort of perspective on this, but like growing up, even like, I don't feel like most institutions really like marketed themselves, now it's like, I have this like game when I'm like driving on I-95, seeing how many billboards I see of like institutions and stuff. And it's just like, it's a lot. Like there's just a lot of people trying to like do those sort of big splashy things. And obviously there's more of the sort of granular, marketing things for prospective students, but also the like day to day, you're just communicating with your current student body. So I guess I'll let you, if you have any sort of thoughts on that, of that idea of like, just even the notion of an institution marketing themselves, like that's just become more normalized.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I think even, 7 years ago when I got into higher ed marketing, marketing or brand were dirty words on most campuses, ours included, and the idea that we should have to sell ourselves to prospective students or market a brand of an institution was just so not something that had ever really been tackled and was seen as somehow maybe beneath higher education in some sense. And that has certainly changed. I mean, our vice president of marketing and advancement is a cabinet member, president in the president's cabinet, with influence on everything that goes on at the institution. So that has changed so much, so fast to give marketing a seat at the table institutionally. And I think our influence is only going to continue to grow as we, get into that other dirty word, the enrollment cliff or the demographic cliff, whichever you prefer. And as we help our institutions navigate that, I think we'll be relied upon heavily to help our institutions make it through that time.
Yeah, because it's something that my mind just kind of was connecting dots, was like, I think over the same period of time, as a sort of like holistic value of higher ed has been like access. And part of that was like, okay, we're like investing more in digital education, online courses and programs and different things like that. But then like that would only go so far if you weren't like telling people about it and intentionally being like, we want you, like we are here for you, like we want to sort of like make ourselves available and known, and known in the way like with the brand that aligns with your particular institution and everything. So certainly an interesting time, and certainly like you said, coming to now, and the role that you have has certainly been influenced by all those changes and everything. So if you want to just get into sort of the nuances of your role in particular right now at Ferris State, and just sort of, I guess, shape that by like how you've interacted with the Pathify platform in particular, I guess is sort of a way to kind of, contextualize it.
Yeah, for sure. And I think just to add on to what we were saying before, I mean, the other issue that higher ed needs to tackle is that trust gap that's forming with the public, right? There is a sense among some folks in our country that higher ed is not the value proposition that it once was. And it's up to, I think, the communications folks. I mean, our faculty members, our professional advisors, the other professionals at our institution are doing the hard work to make sure that value is there. And it's our job as the marketers and communicators on campus to make sure that the world knows about that value. And so I think my role at Ferris, and we're kind of uniquely positioned. I have the privilege of leading a really dynamic team of web developers, content creators, and our job is to tell that Ferris story to the public and help the public understand the unique opportunities we offer students in Big Rapids and across Michigan and the country. But we are uniquely positioned to provide a holistic approach to the student's experience at this point, because we handle everything from digital advertising to the website, and now our new campus portal on the Pathify platform. We've branded it as Ferris 360 because it's a brand new direction for Ferris State University. So we are really uniquely positioned to influence that entire lifetime value of the student, which is a really exciting place to be.
Yeah, and that kind of builds right to my next question, is just sort of like get more specific about, just making these sort of broader statements about like, the impacts that digital tools and things have been having. So getting specific, certainly, tools like Pathify, like, expanding and just sort of more institutional leaders thinking about how they're sort of curating a digital student experience. And there's even just a lot of aspects to that. But if you want to get into even not necessarily like Pathify specifically, but that as sort of a wave of digital transformation impacting your work, like, are there other particular tools that you've sort of brought on or sunsetted, or things like that, of like how you've seen your day-to-day work being impacted by digital tools?
Yeah, absolutely. Our students' primary interface with our campus is digital, right? I mean, whether they're paying their bill, they're registering for classes, they're meeting with their advisor, they're looking at the campus map. They're doing all of it digitally, and that's where they're comfortable. That's where I'm comfortable, right? That's where they want to experience those things. And so for those of us working in higher education, we can often dismiss this sort of lag behind, private industry and other businesses of, we're offering these experiences that aren't quite up to the same level as some of those businesses out there, other industries. And we can go, oh, higher ed moves so slow. What can you do? Or a university is a big ship. It's hard to turn around. I hear that constantly, right? And I don't accept that. And our students shouldn't have to accept that either. I mean, they live their entire lives digitally, and they see no difference between us and the other big brands that they interact with in that digital space. So Amazon delivers physical goods the same day or the next day or very close to it. Netflix, Spotify, they are always providing a reliable stream of high quality entertainment. And what's more is that content and that entertainment is personalized to them. Amazon says, oh, this is the product you're looking for. They don't have to go looking for it. Netflix says, you might like this. Spotify does the exact same thing. These are what they're expecting from digital platforms. And when we don't deliver that, they don't go, oh, well, they're higher ed. Higher ed's hard to turn around. They're a big ship. They go, what's wrong with my university? Why are they so far behind everybody else? And so I don't think that it's reasonable for us to expect them to accept that level of user experience that's not up to what their expectations are, especially when you consider the value and cost the value they're expecting and the cost they're putting into attending our institutions. So tools like Pathify's platform have really allowed us to start unlocking those user experiences that make the difference for our students. As we implemented, so my team led the implementation from the content and design side of Pathify. And one of the things that we did to prepare for the implementation was just tons of user interviews, interview students, interview faculty, interview staff, and say, this portal that we've had for, I don't even know how long we had the previous portal. It was there for forever. What would you expect in the next portal? And one of the really common themes was that students would double back to, well, if Ferris had only had this specific resource that I needed, I would have been more successful last semester or last school year or in my entire education at Ferris. And the super depressing thing for all of us was that very often we would have those resources available on campus. The student or even the faculty or staff member was just not aware of that tool. And that goes to our inability to create the experiences and make those resources discoverable for the student in these legacy tools that we were utilizing. So as we worked through the Pathify implementation, something we were so excited about was connecting those students and faculty and staff members with the resources that could change their trajectory of their semester, change the trajectory of their entire school year, or to that, I mean, change the trajectory of their lives, accelerate them forward into whatever it is they're passionate about pursuing. So I think that in that sense, the digital tools that we use, there should not be a separation between, here's a digital tool that goes to the digital team, and this is another tool that we use across campus. I mean, the students see them the same. We need to treat them the same.
Yeah, well, and just for folks' edification too, I think as of the recording of this episode, you all launched your Pathify portal a couple of weeks ago. So,
we're on week 3.
Yeah,
yep.
Cheers to that. That is awesome. And yeah, I think such a great way to go about it, of like the, interviews and getting that input, and even just like, I think interesting having your all's perspective living and breathing like digital experiences, like that might just be a little bit out of the comfort zone of other folks who like do earnestly see the value and relevance and the importance of it, but like don't, kind of immerse themselves in it as much. And then just like what you're speaking to, like it's even less so necessarily about any particular tool or anything, but just that like influence that the world is having on students' expectation of digital experiences, and even like that understanding and having that influence sort of impacting decisions of like we need to sort of try to keep pace with that will then sort of direct you as to like, okay, well, we need to kind of amplify more so over here in terms of whatever tools and those sort of things. It's not even like necessarily thinking about like, oh, we need to be like the Netflix of college or something, because everybody always like says that or whatever, but like it is an idea of like what I was kind of interpreting, as you sort of like the first step of sort of making that acknowledgement. And then it's like, okay, well, what's the implication there? It's like remove friction in as many points as you can, like that idea of like the recommendations or just the like, get what I want when I want it, and that sort of thing. So the idea of like somebody earnestly is like interested in your institution, is either like trying to like put in an application and request information or register for, like for me, like recently it's been like going and looking at different institutions to try to like find like certificate programs and register for courses. And like part of it has been that like the places that were responsive to my questions or just sort of easy to navigate and find information, and then I can compare stuff. Like it just, yeah, like it just went a really long way, because like it's just objectively that people are going to bail out of processes that have like too much friction or too many hurdles, or like
exactly
certainly like in my case is like if I didn't know how much something was going to cost or how long it was going to take and all that, it's like I can't even like really compare that to anything else that I'm looking at. So that's definitely not going to be a kind of a compelling option. But yeah, it's really great stuff. And I think conversations that I've been having is that like that's something that has to be a continuous process. I think it's sort of one of the final thoughts on this question I'll have is like that user input, and that like it can't be like one and done. I think people sometimes will like check a box or something, and it's just like trying to like keep that going as much as you can too. So it's good that was sort of like part of the origin story of the portal, that was sort of a something that you took on.
I think it's also a recognition. This is something that private industry for a long time has understood, that the experience that a customer has in your building or on your website, or finishing a purchase via your shopping cart, that experience is your brand to the customer. And that is something that I think is finally starting to translate in higher ed, where they're understanding that the process of registering for a class, right? Like this clunky process connecting to the SIS, whatever, that is defining the brand for our students, for our current students. And they're telling their friends. And if that's a clunky, very a process filled with a ton of friction that is confusing or even misleading, that's killing your brand as a higher ed institution. If, however, a student goes to register for classes and they go, I'm really interested in this course. When is it offered? I click which one I'm interested in. It's a very smooth, like shopping cart like experience. That is a positive point to your brand, and students are going to say, much more likely to say, gosh, going to Ferris is really easy. This is just easy. They make it easy for me to focus on being a bulldog and focusing on my classes. And I don't have to worry about all the confusing processes they make me jump through.
Yeah, exactly. Because I mean, it's just like the value, like your brand's value of like care, caring about, their experience or their convenience, or, their respecting their time and all that kind of stuff. And I think certainly for today's students, it's like, somebody of them work part-time or full-time, or, just
Yes.
have other like family obligations and things like that. So it's just like, hey, like, let's make this as easy and simple as possible. Because again, it's like, good on you for even just like, again, like you earnestly are like, I want to do this. I'm trying to register, those sort of things. And it's a shame where people either quit or bail out, or like what you were saying, like go without, where it's just like, man, if I had this resource, like, that would have helped so much. And it's like, we did have it. And then, that like, that is awful that you made decisions in a vacuum, or sort of like, you just went without. Because I think, like making something more personalized or easily searchable and things findable and everything, and even just like, digital tools like Pathify that like allow with like groups or something, where it could just be like, okay, hey, you know what, like I'm raising the white flag here. Like it's just like you can get help from peers, very easily, and those sort of things. Like there's a lot of different avenues just through this one place where you can kind of really kind of investing into as like the user, but then also contouring, the experience on the administration side. But your work being in communication, marketing, and everything specifically, like I'm just curious your perspective, I guess, on like, because obviously, a lot has changed over the past several years, a lot of different tools and different things. And I think there's always sort of this temptation of like, well, we just got to get the bright new shiny thing or whatever else. So like, in what ways does like communicating with like different constituents and stakeholders and things like affect the digital tools that you're leveraging? Like how much do you allow that kind of like ebb and flow to kind of come into your work?
Yeah, sure. So I think the biggest change that I've seen as far as our work goes is when I got started, it was like, hey, write a great line of copy that's inclusive of these 15 audiences that we're trying to serve. And the recognition, the evolution of realizing that doesn't work has been slow and somewhat painful, because we went to, well, we can't serve all these audiences with just one website, so we better have a whole bunch of subdomains. And then that becomes a terrible thing to manage. We got to get rid of these subdomains and go back to just writing inclusive copy. To finally the realization that if we take advantage of tools that allow us to personalize our points of entry for all of our audiences, then we can serve those audiences in a significantly a better way. So we utilize a CMS that allows us to provide those personalized messages and images and total page experiences to different audiences. And a great example that I love to use is first, we are a first generation first institution at Ferris. So we serve 1 in 4 Ferris students will be the first in their family to earn a college degree, which I am super passionate about. And as a as a student who went to school feeling somewhat unprepared for the jargon and the acronyms and the all of the many confusing things that we take for granted in higher ed, I knew that those first generation students were not going to be able to say, if we just said, "Oh, here's the FAFSA," it's like, well, what's the FAFSA, right? There's so many students who don't understand that this is the free application for federal student aid, and sometimes you need to spell that out. What does it mean to fill out the FAFSA? So using our CMS, we're able to personalize those messages to students based on whatever data we know about them. So if they're a first generation student, we have resources that walk them through steps that maybe a student whose parents have been to the university or they're a legacy or something like that. We don't really need to handhold them through that part of the process, but we can give a little more information to a first generation student or an adult student who is coming back and is worried about childcare. If we recognize that, we can provide that information. If we know that you're a student who has is coming from out of state or internationally, we can provide you with the information about your tuition rates and how that's going to change. And this means that those students don't need to dig for that information on their own, and creates a lot less friction in the process of going from, oh, I'm kind of interested in this place to, wow, I'm really interested in becoming a Ferris State Bulldog.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting to hear, but it makes a lot of sense. The idea that like you had a platform like your CMS that was flexible to allow personalization versus like what you're saying, like when it starts to get this sort of like digital sprawl of like, oh, subdomains and this and that, like, or, you know, something else. And then even I think the paradigm that has been hard to break, I feel like that I've seen more people sort of mention as a pain point is that idea of like, hey, just do the one thing that's sort of been kind of like, you know, whitewash to be sort of okay for everybody or something, and like it's super vague and not specific or whatever. But if there's a digital tool that allows you to communicate in a flexible, personalized way to different audiences and stuff, like that's really powerful, and that you don't have to like, you know, make it simplified to a point that it's like not relevant or engaging, or have to like try to, you know, utilize a bunch of different tools to try to just like complete like a task of like, you know, sending out, you know, some sort of update or something. So
Yeah.
it's really interesting because I like that sort of that notion of like what you were able to achieve with that.
I mean, it allows us to really address the student journey holistically, right? If we can understand that this is a student who we've never made contact with, we need to provide them with those brand messages and give them a simple entry point. That's great. If we can understand via our CRM connected to our CMS that this is a student who has gone so far as to apply, we can provide them with their next steps. And all of this is about addressing that student journey as much as possible from beginning to end, and just making it easy. Just make it easy so that they can take the next step that they're interested in taking.
Yeah, and I think, yeah, it's just really powerful. I think with just like the mindset shift, and I think again, it feels like that you're operating in a way with sort of like what I have coined as sort of like that digital first mindset. Like you're starting from there, even if it is like kind of the parallel you're drawing of like, obviously people are using Amazon to get a physical good delivered to that, and it's like still even like there's a pretty close parallel for higher ed that is like all this could be ending up with a student walking into a classroom to get taught by a faculty member. It's not even like doing all this because it's just like, well, campuses are pointless, everyone's just gonna be teaching online and doing whatever. It's like it's all sort of blending together, and you're thinking in that digital first mindset, since like you said, it's like you're probably paying your bill online, you're probably registering for classes online, you're probably gonna like find out what's on the menu at the dining hall online, like, you know, like all these different things. Like you need to have, you know, the mobile experience, the website, everything consistent and available, and just that accessibility and that ease, removing those friction points and everything. Like it's just just a mindset shift. And I think that's like, you know, one of my final questions here, like looking more towards the future. And as you're, you know, I think any institutional leader, regardless, I guess, where they are in the process of implementing different digital tools, like I think needs to do this strategic planning to sort of interface with and reckon with sort of the digital transformation and needing to operate in a digital first way. What are you seeing on the horizon for your work specifically when it comes to utilizing digital tools?
Yeah. Well, and I think you sort of touched on it. We need to focus on how do we, we're getting better, I think, at when something is a totally digital process, removing the friction there, right? And we're pretty good at when something is an in-person process, we understand how to move students through those processes in a reasonable way. Where we still continue to fall down a little bit is creating frictionless transitions between the physical spaces and the virtual spaces. And one of the biggest reasons that we decided to go with Pathify as our vendor for this new platform was because we felt that the community building aspects of Pathify's platform would allow us to start making those transitions less and less friction, or less friction within those transitions. So if I'm a student and I am a part of, let's take student government, for example, I have my student government meeting in person in the university center, and it's really great, but I have extra questions for the rest of the student government body. So I run over to Pathify after the meeting and I have that question in the student government group. It's answered there. I can also find all of the upcoming dates for the student government meetings. I can find the resources that we've published, and I can build that community in both places at once, and it should feel seamless. I shouldn't feel like I'm communicating with one group over here and one group in a different place. So those transitions between the physical space and the virtual space should start to feel absolutely seamless as we build this out. So that's going to be a major challenge for us as we understand how people make those transitions and how to smooth them out. But I really believe that the number one way to do that in general is building things that are both personalized as much as possible, but as much as we can possibly get there, individualized. So when I personalize something, right, I'm building it out. I'm like, okay, this persona, this group of this good chunk of 1,000 people or more who are going to come to the website every day, I'm building a message for them. We say personalized, and it's really not. It's for a large group of people, right? We're just segmenting that audience. But at some point, we're going to be able to move into individualization. And individualization is going to really require new technology. It's going to require AI. I'm not going to do the whole AI thing like Google, but I do think that those tools are going to come in and help us achieve a really individualized experience for those students. And that's going to be absolutely game changing, where we can deliver that content based exactly on their situation specifically at the right time when they need it. So that's on the horizon, and I can't wait for it to happen.
Right. Well, because like the AI framing that you did, like, and it's good people sort of taking a measured approach and knowing this, like, it's something that is going to impact our work. It's not going to take over the world or do whatever. But that it's building upon the foundation or the values or the priorities, like the things that is only going to make them easier or better, all the above, and all that. But I do really like that you mentioned the in-person to digital transitions and vice versa, because that is certainly, objectively more complex, but is, I think, like the ideal state that the modality, like there's a lot there, because it's like, one, just the examples you mentioned are great. And to me too, it's the idea that like you start to kind of wash away sort of any sort of ideas about the modality of anything. Like the idea would be like, okay, you have those student government meetings and they're available for people to like tune in remotely or attend in person and engage asynchronously before or after, or like almost like not making a huge kind of to do about like, well, are you in the online MBA program? Or are you in like the on ground? What, like sometimes like there's like completely different processes or different things. It's like you're applying to the program, it's the same. You're just sort of clicking into a different modality, which you could also change if it's like, oh, actually, I'm a working professional in this MBA program on ground. I just got promoted to an incredible job, but it's going to make me move to somewhere else. And it's like, cool, okay, yeah, just take your classes online, like no big deal. So like all those sort of things are, I think, going to be what's on the horizon, is like continually sort of like integrating into sort of the processes, just sort of the culture of the institution to try to identify those transition points and easing them as much as possible. Because I think it is exactly what you said. It's super, it's super easy, or much easier to build a completely digital like workflow or process for like an online student who's never going to come on campus. But then it's the idea of like, if somebody was on ground but wanted to use that process or something, like you could just anticipate things where it's like, oh, we didn't design with that in mind or something or whatever. But so I think, all really great perspectives and great things for folks to think about. But in honor of our partner for this content series, we will take a cue from the Connected Campus podcast here on Higher Ed Geek and ask you, as we finish up this episode, what does a connected campus look and or feel like to you?
Oh, geez. So I think take a second to think about how I want to say this. Kind of already used my transition from physical to virtual space line here. So.
because that's again, we'll edit this part out. But like, if you want to go like more like the feeling route or something, because some people do get very objective, like it should look like this, like that kind of thing. So it could be like you kind of just acknowledge your answer before, being that kind of like tangible, sort of objective example. But then it's like, what do you hope students feel? Like, what do you hope they sort of how do you hope that kind of comes across to them? Give you come at that.
So I think connected campus, to me, we at Ferris, we love to brag about our small class sizes. We love to talk about how caring our faculty and our advisors are. And we hear this from our students all the time, that this is one of the reasons that they love Ferris, because they feel like we are a campus that cares about them. And I want to see us use our digital tools, our physical tools, any tool at our disposal to translate that experience that students are feeling on campus to absolutely wherever they are. So whether they are, in an online program, or they are at one of our many hubs across the state of Michigan, where we can provide access points to students, they're feeling that exact same experience of, this is a place that cares about me. And I believe that it is really that virtual to in-person transition that I mentioned before that's going to allow us to create that feeling for students. So for me, connected campus, it really just means extending the experience for students wherever they are.
And as someone who loves metaphors, for some reason, my brain went to one of like that idea of like connection between transitions and everything like that level of care. Because like, connection, it's like cohesive, it's tight and all that, where it's like, without it, it's like, the transitions that you're making are like a rickety bridge where it's like, you could get across, but it's kind of like, you're like not feeling like stable, or kind of like, well, this doesn't feel safe. So the idea of like, okay, we have this bridge to go from here to there, physical, digital, vice versa, whatever it is. You want to make sure that it's like a tight, sturdy bridge that is supportive, that is caring, and it's just like, cohesive and everything. That's just sort of where my mind went, because it's sometimes like everybody can kind of understand when you get like these sort of, emotional metaphors and that feeling, like that care that can come across in so many different ways. And whether you're online or in person and everything. So really appreciate amazing perspectives that you had and the work that you're doing, and for you taking some time to hang out and do this episode here. And with ways to follow up with you, keep the conversation going if folks are interested. And just thank you again so much for your time.
Yeah, thanks very much. And if anybody's interested, they can find me on LinkedIn.
Thanks for listening to the Connected Campus. Please leave a 5-star review for the show and share it so others can discover us. Make sure to also subscribe so you never miss an episode. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you in the next episode of the Connected Campus.